Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and conference organisers. Thank you for giving me this opportunity today. Like some others here, I kind of threw my hat in the ring some time ago when there was a teaching and learning conference, and then found out it was going to be about servant leadership and thought, that'll teach me. Then the more I thought about what I was going to talk today, the more I kind of think it does fit in with that. I really want to examine that later. I'm also minded that I recently went to Berkeley to a law conference where some of the very brightest young PhD researchers were speaking. And it soon became apparent to me that this seemed to be more some kind of talking competition in which the idea was to say as many words as possible within the 20 minutes allocated than it was in actually having some form of informed debate to a varied audience. It seems to me that the people there hadn't learned the lesson I'd been taught many years before, that the less you have to say, the less words you have to write, and hopefully the less there is to be criticised about. We'll see. So anyway, today I'd like to just discuss a number of themes, often referred in academic discourse as plagiarism. I should, as this is a discussion on plagiarism, begin by thanking and acknowledging the work of Jude Carroll, who is responsible for many of the ideas that I'm putting forward to you today. She's a leading light in this particular field. I attended a workshop run by her at Northampton as part of my own CPD as the school's academic misconduct office, and I was quite shocked to find the state of affairs that we currently find ourselves in academia, in particular in regard to commissioning. So, first I'm going to set the scene, give some context, brief synopsis of where we're up to, discuss this kind of latest worrying trend, try and identify how we can find out how students are commissioning, consider briefly some strategies to help reduce this problem in the first place. And then finally I'm going to look at how this kind of fits into our own institutional ethos of servant leadership, and so that we can all consider what we can do about this growing trend of, well, cheating. To begin with, a health warning. I do not have all, or even necessarily some of the answers. I am not yet God, or principal director, as we like to call them. The aim today is just hopefully to stimulate some individual thought, some academic debate, perhaps for you to go away and consider your own action research project within your own institution, perhaps to get together to produce some papers and move the subject on. So to begin with, a brief history. As we know, about 1998, Google arrived, and by the turn of the century, there started to be a problem in academia amongst the cut and paste brigade. 2002 saw the introduction of Turnitin, and then as we moved on through the decade, some sharing of ideas and conferences on dealing with this idea of cut and pasting from the internet. Institutions started taking this on and seeing this as a problem to be dealt with through policies and individual cases. There's no national strategy, joined up thinking within the UK and its institutions. By 2010, concerns that particular types of students, particular groups of students were more at risk than others. And then everyone starts to wake up to the idea that students can simply take stuff off the internet. Who would have thought? By 2012, the latest problem starts to emerge, that of commissioning, or paying someone to do your work. And we'll speak about that more in a moment. But let's just think a minute. Let's just take a minute to think about what is passing off the work of others for benefit. Plagiarism, a good old academic word. I'd never heard of it until I came to university. What does that mean to you? And more importantly, what does that mean to our students? Don't worry, that's a rhetorical question. This isn't a test. I'm not going to ask you to tell me. So just to remind us all, plagiarism occurs when the work product or name or, from a named or identifiable person, source, in a situation where originality is expected, without showing that identifiable person or source for credit or benefit, in a situation where originality was expected. And that is plagiarism. So that's kind of an accepted definition of what we mean. Let me just take a minute think about the idea of originality. It's something that can often baffle academics as well as students. What does that mean? I remember when I started my PhD and people said it has to be an original piece of work. Oh my God, 100,000 words of original work, that's never going to happen. They said, no, you just have to sort of think about something that's new, even if it's just one paragraph, even if you're just explaining best practice. Thank God for that, I might go get this done. So for students, they need to know and understand what it is. They don't have to come up with a new theory or idea with every single piece of work they put in. It just simply has to be original to them. Okay, so if they quote an entire book properly, it may well be correctly referenced, but in the sense there's nothing in it. There's no originality. There's nothing for credit. So this does remain an issue in 2015 and will beyond. We may think we've got a grip of cut and paste type plagiarisms through Turnitin and the like. I'll talk about that as well. But what about the emergence of this new idea, commissioning? As I mentioned, in the main, this is paying someone to do your work for you, but it can take many forms. From full on, this is my assignment, please write it for me, to perhaps a lesser, could you check my assignment over, check my spelling, grammar, punctuation, can you help me write it? To going on to online forums, geek forums, hey, this is what I've been set, who can help me out here? Oh yeah, I can do that for you. What about students who resubmit work they have previously submitted, either at the present institution or elsewhere? So the methods used are both prolific and varied. And so are the services available to our students, which we must all be aware of if we're going to consider effective ways of being able to counter them. But how much of a problem is this? Well, RISB tells us that the current market for commissioning is only constrained by the supply side and the capacity and consumers' willingness to pay. Or in other words, it's very prolific. So for all of us, at every level within any institution, we must understand why it matters. At the institutional level, we must have the clear policies and practices in place that make it both difficult and undesirable as possible. Not only making sure it's clear that it won't be tolerated, but having the heaviest penalties for those who are found guilty of commissioning. And this needs to be supported from the highest levels of the institution. For students, it's got to be made crystal clear from the outset and throughout their studies why it's important to produce their own work and to acknowledge correctly the work of others. And by the work of others, I also mean others' ideas or concepts, beliefs. It's important that they understand what it is we are asking of them so that they can achieve their goal. And what's going to happen to them if they get it wrong? What if they make a mistake? What if they're lazy? What if they deliberately cheat? Is it worth the risk? What is the cost-benefit, if you like, of trying to get away with it and getting caught doing it? Now, I know this is going to come as a shock to many of you, but a lot of our students do not come into higher education to obtain education and learn. They come in to get a qualification, and that is not the same thing. Now, I would argue that we've got to embed from the outset of their academic journey the ethics of our institution and the importance of integrity of the independent learner, which includes understanding how and why it's important to acknowledge the work of others. Now, this does not diminish them as scholars, quite the opposite. It rather enhances them as researchers and evaluators, and it shows that they can use the very highest cognitive skills. For us at the sharp end, otherwise known as lecturers, the challenge is how do you get your students to understand why this matters? So we've got to develop our own individual teaching skills, not only to spot items that are not currently students' own work, but to develop our own skills within the curriculum and assessment design in order to eliminate or suppress this growing problem. And for our academic support staff, we must ensure that there are clear pathways where everyone knows their individual responsibility through well-published and clear procedures with the correct penalties for those students who break the rules. That's all very well and good then. So how do we do this? Well, Lancaster suggests that there is no magic bullet, no magic solution. We have to embed good generic practice. As I said at the beginning, I don't have all the answers. Rao, Tennant, Risby and others share a similar theme that as an institution we have to adjust our penalties accordingly when we do detect plagiarism and commissioning. we should consider it to be academic fraud, where expulsion perhaps is the only penalty. And Sutherland Smith talk about the actual assessment design and how we can help reduce these opportunities. Carroll herself reminds us that the level of proof required is that of the balance of probabilities. That is it more likely to have occurred than not? And she also says that paying for somebody else to do your work is academic fraud. She suggests that the emphasis should be put on stressing the individual costs to the particular student rather than looking at whole student numbers, what it's going to matter to them if they get caught. So are there any particular students who are at risk? Is there only one that we should worry about? For those of us in widening participation type institutions, to quote Ron, there are certain groups, those students who are risk preferring, those who have English as an additional language, and those who are expecting lower grades than they actually need. These are the higher at-risk groups. And the risk posed by this group dramatically decreases as the chances of them being caught and the penalties for doing so increase. So some good old criminology theory there. Some of the considerations for those students that are caught or are thinking about commissioning that can be put across are these ideas of their fitness to practice, particularly if they're going into professions that I teach in within law, finance, and this understanding of how important it is to their future employability if students see university as that reason. Costs, how prolific? Well, if you do a Google search for please write my essay or anything else like that, not anyone in this room would, of course, but if you did, you'll turn up with hundreds of sites. A couple of examples that are on the screen behind you. Average at £71 when dissertations were excluded. Others run between £43 and £100. Now, this is work that is actually written by some very dubious academics. Some can be guaranteed or are said to guarantee to be Oxbridge educated, but there's no way of checking. And this price that the students pay varies on a sliding scale of the grade they want and when they want it to be completed. The price goes up the nearer the deadline, not because it's more difficult for these firms to write these essays, simply they know that the students are just that much more in need of the essays being completed. And when I discussed this, interestingly enough, with my counterpart at Social Sciences, Samo, I know very well, she told me that in all the cases that she had dealt with, the vast majority were to do with students' procrastination and time management issues, where they simply ran out of time and went on to commission or have somebody write an essay for them. So that's something as servant leaders we need to recognise. It's something we need to understand and challenge. We need to look at our assessment strategies, but also we need to look at the general support we offer students and the training we give them, for want of a better word, in how to manage their own time. How does this all fit into servant leadership? Well, here at LSBM, and in fact all institutions, we need an approach which is, of course, top-down as well as bottom-up, and we should consider it a serious issue. But to start with, we shouldn't put temptation in their way. Some of you might suggest that students should just learn to resist, but if they're anything like me in food, then all I can say is that avoidance is not only the best policy, it's the only policy. Our students are only human after all, and if you set them up to cheat and fail, some of them will. So although we've got to show vigilance and due diligence in our marking, we've got to remove the risk before this occurs. So how do we do this? Again, I don't have time today to go into a great deal of details, but Carroll suggests that one of the ways is that we try and get students to make an answer, not find an answer. So, for example, giving students assessments that require individualised data context or situations, requiring students to collect primary data, such as questionnaires, case histories and personal experiences and reflections, setting topics that are local and recent, Specific, avoiding well-established and generic global questions that just beg for a look on Wikipedia or the latest geek forum. Ask for novel formats in the discourse style, patent applications, parliamentary questions, freedom of information requests. Specify some of your own material to be included. We must also look at the process of the marking to make sure that it is open and that we are able to see some of the assessment artefacts, getting students to present progress in work, asking students to demonstrate activity such as drafts, lit reviews, and if in doubt, asking for random vivas to test understanding knowledge. Who told you that? How did you find that out? So, in conclusion, we need to accept that commissioning is widespread, it's growing, it's cheap, and you should expect it. There isn't a lot of research over there, so let's not all beat ourselves up. Nobody's doing it well. We have an opportunity to start. I think as an institution, we should, from here on in, try and do our best. I know a lot of you will say that where we are delivering other people's degrees, our assessment strategy is written for us, but that's no reason why we can't consider advising or can't consider making amendments to assessments at our partner institution. We should try and look at ways that we can deter out rather than detect in. And this will certainly fit into our ethos of student leadership, servant leadership. Sorry. We certainly don't want our students making this as a final speech. We want us as an institution, our stakeholders and our students to have confidence in the awards that they are written, that they have been given, that they have been able to do what it says on the tin. Thank you.